Welcome to the Green Streets Forum, where we discuss the topics and trends focused on environmental responsibility and green awareness. We're spreading the message about sustainability with the goal of sharing this information with the diverse community. We all know so that we all grow. Today, we're excited to welcome our special guest, Dr. Dira Delpech, to share insights, experiences, and ideas that help move sustainability and community impact forward. And now, let's jump into today's episode with your host, Kimberly Bullock.
Welcome back to Green Streets Forum. Today, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Dira Melissa, is that your middle name?
Melissa
Delpeck, whose work centers on equity, community impact, and creating pathways for underserved communities through research and collaboration. Dr. Delpeck recently participated in last week's Cityscape Summit 2026 in New Orleans, and I really had a great time, where leaders, researchers, and advocates gathered to discuss economic opportunity, energy equity, and the future of sustainable community development, as well as educational development. Today, we'll explore how research can move beyond data and directly impact real people and academics, real neighborhoods, and future generations. Dr. Delpeck, thank you so much for joining us today on Green Streets Forum.
Thank you so much for having me, Kimberly. I'm glad to be here.
So let me start by singing your praises, because I did get some information, and no, I was not stalking you, but I did get some information. Let's see, all the wonderful things. You are affiliated with Ohio State University?
That's correct. Yes, I graduated from there.
All right. And you have a PhD in engineering education and you have your master's in engineering management?
That's correct. Yeah.
And you collaborated with Dr. Emily Dringenberg? Is that the?
Yes, that was my graduate studies advisor.
Okay. And it says, and this is the part that I really, really liked, is that you're recognized by your peers for leadership, empathy, and collaboration in creative, inclusive spaces in academic and professional environments. That's the stuff that got me, okay? And I know that's what you discussed at the Cityscape Summit when you did your presentation with HBCU CDAC.
Yes, definitely my life's passion.
Oh, I could tell. I could absolutely tell. That was absolutely amazing. I was blown away. I'm not being hyperbolic. I really was blown away. I really enjoyed it. So here are the questions that I have. The first one, let me step back for a little bit. My listeners, so I want to talk to you about them because one of the things, my biggest statement is the more you know, the more you grow. And quite frankly, my listeners, for the most part, are not of the world of academia. And you are a professor. You that is your realm. And it was important to me that I bring people that are academics to my forum to make their knowledge accessible. So this is why I'm glad you're here. You're going to find that these questions, they do address what it is that you presented, but I wanted to make them a little user-friendly. So that's what I'm asking as you respond to the questions. Please make them true to your work, but we're trying to make it so that my listeners do understand. I'm not saying dumb down the questions because my listeners are intelligent and they are smart. But for the most part, we're really trying to make things, give them a real world kind of aspect. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So question number 1, what first drew you to this area of research and energy equity work?
That's a great question to get things kicked off. So I came up through the engineering ranks studying civil engineering in undergraduate, and I was always interested in it, but I quickly understood what it meant to be a Black woman navigating that space, specifically like attending a predominantly white institution. The different extracurriculars that I was involved in, including working as an intern for different companies and campus involvement, got my curiosity piqued as to how we can create spaces that are more inclusive. Like I was that student that was just always involved in something, and I enjoyed that a lot more, I think, than what I was doing in engineering. But I'm still a technical person, and I still like to process things. So trying to figure out what was next. I stumbled upon engineering education out of pure luck or pure faith, possibly. And the work that I started doing made me understand actually, really how to put a name of the phenomenon that I was living as an engineering student in the practice, in the theory, right? I could put a name to it. Then through a fellowship opportunity, I started working at Argonne National Laboratory as an intern, helping them create a program there, and that's how I got involved in the energy sector. At first, originally, I didn't really see how my civil engineering skills could fit there, but it fit pretty good. So I was still doing my PhD while working, and I was looking for funding opportunity, and working with Dr. Yaz Motoyama happened, and it was just that my time, the opportunity, and he was doing research on energy equity, and I was like, okay, this seems to once again mesh my interest pretty okay. I've tried it out. We started working together, and we've been doing this for about 2.5 years now, which has been great. It's definitely something that I've seen across various STEM disciplines, the need to talk about what equity is. But with my background that had now shifted from engineering to energy, I felt that it was fitting. So that's how I stumbled in that space.
Okay, so that segues into the next question. What were some of the biggest patterns and themes that emerged during this study?
Well, I really like this question. Um, Being able once again to place a name or to place a theory to systemic experiences that we get to live and to witness. My experience going through the Ohio State University, I didn't realize that HBCUs had similar type of issues when it came to sexism and racism and how Black faculty were climbing through the ranks. There's a perception tied to HBCUs of community resilience and togetherness. At the graduate level, that ecosystem looks very different than the undergraduate level. And with many schools still being underfunded, it was harsh to realize how Black faculty, Black and brown faculty were navigating the ranks. So some of those trends, again, were very similar to what I was learning in engineering education. And the theory that I was acquiring, my biggest thing is we can't leave theory in the books. We have to figure out how it applies in the practice. The biggest themes and emerging patterns that I could see were the resemblance in experiences that I knew coming from predominantly white institutions also happening and being amplified at HBCUs, which was something that from a personal experience I wasn't familiar with. I wasn't prone to understanding. The perception and the stigma that's tied to HBCUs is the spirit of family, of resilience, right? Which is that's something that's important for the Black community. So understanding that at the graduate level, the experience that Black and brown faculty experienced at PWIs was actually magnified at HBCUs due to the lack of resources and funding and a lot of pressure for them was glaring. That was something that I was not expecting from this research. And then when you think of how it amplifies through sexism as well for Black women in those spaces, there's a massive shift that takes place from a research standpoint to realize that the inequities are systemic, right? Like we already knew this from predominantly white institutions, which tend to be studied a lot more, but now applying those research questions to the HBCU setting was able to let us confirm that this is something that's happening all across the board.
Okay, thank you. I'm so glad we got that in. I was so hurt about that. Okay. Um, here's my question, and this is very pivotal. Why? Why is representation in clean energy research important for the future of innovation? Because I think this is at the crux of what you do. This is it. This is at the heart of it. So go ahead.
Your question is so important when it comes to the conversation around energy and clean energy, which has now been demonized almost as a term, right? It says clean energy feels taboo in many rooms. But I think we all understand what we mean by that is that Black communities, Black and Brown communities continue to be left out of the conversation because a lot of the environmental impacts are targeted at these communities, right? The data centers, AI, granted innovation coming from those facilities will help down the road. The environmental factors tied to them are impacting Black and Brown communities the most. And so when we say that representation matters is because people coming from the groups that are impacted don't always get to have their voices being heard when it comes to advocating for solutions that are inclusive of all. So for researchers, faculty, scientists to be able to find solutions that also consider their communities, it is important that they get included into the conversation, right? So when mentoring fails, when representation is limited, when resources lack or aren't necessarily available, then we have an entire group that does not get to be part of that solution. And that's where it's detrimental. And we're continuing to widen the gap in access to innovation, to technology, to the solutions that are meant to help everybody, but that are factually oppressing one group over the other.
Now, I want to get into some specificity with the report. And the report discusses barriers researchers face beyond funding alone, okay? Because it's more than the money, you know? What stood out to you the most? Okay, not just the money. You know the money is there. What are some other barriers?
That's a great question. And at first glance, somebody may not portray this as a barrier, but the amount of weight of responsibilities that's put on to Black researchers, for many people, they may think that, oh, well, I've been here for 2 years, and so I'm already getting promoted to being dean of students or having a lot more administrative tasks. The truth is, it takes away from the research agenda that faculty are hired to do. And that is a big invisible barrier because it requires a work and mental load from faculty that is much more significant than what their peers at predominantly white institutions would be experiencing, right? Due to the limited resources available at HBCUs, you'll often see new faculty come in and having to master being the faculty, being the administrative lead, being the grant manager, being the mentor for their students, and the mentee because they still themselves have to learn through the program that they're coming into, and they're wearing many hats. And there's no options for research buyout, right? So that's something that takes a toll, and there's less time. People still have to live their personal lives as well. So managing all of that creates burnout very quickly, and therefore limited access to opportunities because they're trying to manage so much on their own. And with the lack of network, because other faculty around them are also pretty burnt out, when it comes to mentoring, when it comes to developing relationships, there are many hurdles that come their way. So that was the finding that I felt was contradictory to what faculty would expect them to be, like promotion in the context of Black researchers at HBCUs may not necessarily always be conducive to their well-being.
All right, now, Dr. Delpeck, I need you to tie this up in a pretty little bow with this last question. What gives you optimism about the future of this work? What is it that gives you optimism?
That's a beautiful question, and it requires definitely some thinking. I think the nature of Black people and resilience, my own PhD studies demonstrated that, right? Like my dissertation showed what resilience meant in the context of engineering organizations and communities. And when I studied Black women, my basis was that the findings oftentimes, whenever we better conditions for Black women, we tend to better them for all other communities as well. Taking this back and translating into this context, the government, and I work in government, so I want to be very clear that I'm not being facetious or nothing, but is not the only path to finding liberation for Black and Brown communities. There are still many organizations that are putting in the work, that are trying hard to advocate for energy use to be inclusive of all communities, of all groups, and all voices. And I think that oftentimes we tend to not consider what those organizations can also provide as far as resources. So the nature of, again, Black people finding solutions every time to overcome hardships and learning to create networks for themselves, right? This is something we've seen throughout history. Being able to overcome the limited resources that I may have in my institution by going and finding alternatives. That's something that was demonstrated very clearly throughout this study, that I think that as researchers, we can now help amplify. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to, again, take this study from disseminating it and having it in journals to becoming content that's digestible for the communities that actually need to learn about this, right? Propagation is the term I want to use, is we have to get this content to the people so they know that there are solutions that do exist, and making it digestible. So by the way of this podcast, which I think is a great way of doing so, getting people to hear that there's this research out there and it involves you all, and there are ways, and it just helps, right? Being connected through community by building those bridges. That's really what I'm excited about in the future, because community really trumps it all. So it's just about doing it.
Well, absolutely. That's our goal, is to spread the word. I think you put this in a pretty little bow. And I do believe that with you and groups like HBCU, CDAC, for those of you that don't know, that's Historically Black Colleges and Universities Community Development Action Coalition. I think that we're on to something. And again, Dr. Delpeck, your work is to be commended, and I appreciate you taking the time to expose that and share yourself to the Green Streets Forum. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
This episode of the Green Streets Forum is powered by USB Solar Solutions, distributor of SunSign, solar-powered signage lighting the way to a cleaner and brighter future. In collaboration with The Ohio State University and HBCU CDAC, supporting research, innovation, and real-world solutions that drive sustainability and create lasting community impact. If you enjoyed today's conversation, visit usbsolars.com to learn more. Let's keep pushing forward and power the future of clean energy, one sun sign at a time. Until next time, stay inspired and stay green.